There is good news, which is important. A lot of state, local, philanthropic examples that we can look to, because I do think we need to be solutions-oriented. This is the biggest domestic policy tragedy or failure of our lifetime, in my humble opinion. You can look at New Jersey and Louisiana, which have passed bills that provide high-dosage tutoring to more children. Those are great examples. Mike Bloomberg and his Summer Boost program is a philanthropic effort in 8 cities across the country to give high-dosage tutoring to students. There have been investments in summer. Governor Ducey's AZ on Track in his last term. And I would also just like to highlight that Governor Brad Little, he used COVID relief and gave it directly to families. And to me, if in the future you're worried about what happens if you make a major infusion for education expenses, it could be best just to trust families. One last thing, we do need to look at the country's Catholic schools, and particularly urban Catholic schools. They gave the proof in many cases that it was possible to open schools safely. I think we owe them a debt of gratitude, and they should be a part of the solution in the future.
Mr. Bradford, I know a large focus of your work is school choice. I think school choice is absolutely essential to getting students back on track. Over the last 3 years, we saw states massively expand choice programs. How do you think school choice can empower parents and get students back on track?
Thank you, Congresswoman Fox. So by some reports, 1 million kids are no longer going to their neighborhood public school, and about 2/3 of those kids have chosen charter schools or other kinds of school options, be they homeschooled or private school or whatever. So on the one hand, I would just say the obvious, no school is going to work for every child. On the other hand, I would say what has presented itself is an America where parents are thinking much more critically about matching their child's aspirations and where they attend school. So I think this is all a very good thing. I think this approach should be essential to how we think about the system that we want, not the one we've been interrogating all day.
Are you doing continuing testing to find out where the students are?
We are.
And based on what is working and what might not be working, what recommendations can you suggest outside of the pandemic?
So I would say that we need to not run away from accountability, that standardized testing lets us know where we are falling short with which subgroups. Had it not been for No Child Left Behind, we wouldn't know that our Black and brown students were experiencing the kinds of gaps that they were.
What happened to the money? And there are lots of anecdotes out there, and I can point you to tons of places, but the New York Times is a good place to look. And I didn't do this on purpose, ranking member, but in Klamath County, they're spending 70% of their relief dollars to buy turf fields, renovate bleachers, build a gym, and resurface a parking lot. In Newark, New Jersey, where I worked for a very long time, Chalk Beat reported that Newark spent only 5% of its ESSER funding on tutoring. And I think, sadly, what's been proven is that if you give American school districts $190 billion in a black box with no accountability, they'll spend the money on themselves.
Dr. Malkus, one of the things that concern me about the learning loss is that high poverty minority students seem to be particularly left behind. Can you talk more about what the data looks like for high poverty and minority students and why these children seem to be especially hard hit?
There's 3 factors to pay attention to on this question. The first is there was a downturn in student achievement that preceded the pandemic. Around 2013, we started to see a slight downturn. The second thing is closures were disproportionately difficult for poor and minority and low achieving students. For each week they were closed, and those closures lasted longer for those students. So holding all things constant, they got a 1-2 punch during the pandemic, and they'll be paying for it for some time.
I'll just jump to the point given the amount of time that I have. It is sophistry that the narrative being sort of peddled in the public domain is that teachers' unions had no role in keeping schools closed longer than they needed to be closed. You can look at this as the culmination of a series of labor actions that started in Kentucky and Oklahoma, but that really blew up in Chicago and in Los Angeles during the Democratic presidential primaries. At the time, those striking teachers who denied kids learning, which is the most common way we see, learning being denied from families right now is teacher strikes. They struck for pay increases. Democratic candidates during that election offered to triple Title I as a way to increase teacher pay at the local level. Teachers unions saw this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to sort of get teacher pay on the federal balance sheet. And though they never would have been able to strike in a national capacity before, there's no way they could have afforded it, COVID provided them with that opportunity. And I just want to say, I know a lot of people don't want to say this is an unpopular thing to say, but Mayor Muriel Bowser here in the District of Columbia had to file a temporary restraining order against her own teachers union when she attempted to get schools open. So Representative Bean, to your 90s references, the truth is out there.